Hi class, I'm back. This is the second lecture for small group formation, small group communication class. And I'm going to go straight to the PowerPoint where we left off. Here we are. Okay, so we left off talking about a system, how they function interdependently, right? We talked about that, how all those pieces fit together to make the whole, like the human body. If something goes wrong with one of the pieces, it affects the rest of the pieces. Think of this in your group, how important each group member is, if we're going to apply this to group communication, right? And that a system is affects and is affected by the environment they're in. So we're going to talk, actually not next is not open or closed systems, but we'll talk about that a little. But technically, think of like, again, go back to the human body. We are impacted by the environment around us, not just like toxic pollution or it's by people. What their moods can affect us, our body, our emotions affect our body, right? So we are not a closed system. And what's happening inside us affects other people, right? So think of it, keep thinking about that way. So even in your group as a system, the outside affects you as a group, and what's in the group, how your group is performing also, or how your group is interacting, participating together, also then impacts what's external to your group. All right, so there's going to be some variables of this theory. So before I even get into talking about this, but this is one of the variables. We've got inputs, outputs, throughputs or throughput processes, and the environment. And we're going to talk about all of those pieces of what's part of this systems theory. Inputs, it's easy word to think of because it makes sense. Input has to do with those things that you bring from the outside. Could be you, right? Could be your thoughts and your ideas. Bringing the inside, those raw materials that you bring to the group. So they can be your talents. They can be information that you have. It can be your energy that you bring to the group, whether you're positive or negative or somewhere in between or apathetic. All of that are the raw materials that you bring to the group. Those are inputs. If you want to think about the human body, I want you to think about it in terms of the human body, things that we eat. Have we eat, like right now I'm thirsty. My water is my input. So, throughput processes. The inputs go through. So once you have that, it's going to go through a process of how you're going to utilize that, whether it's people, information, what are you going to do with it? Examples of, so you have these talents, you have these abilities that people bring, and I've talked about this. I love to give this example because a good group will acknowledge what people's talents are and what they're good at and utilize them through roles, right? Or through deciding where the leadership is and what areas. It has to do with the norms or the rules that you establish in your group, depending on the personalities. Again, what are those inputs? Throughput processes. If you think about it as a human body, think about it in terms of, I just drank water, so that water, actually, I'm not a biologist, so I'm just going to make a guess here. Those of you that are biology majors could correct me, but the water is going in my system, and however that gets broken down, because water is H2O, right? Oxygen and hydrogen, it gets broken down and feeds my cells in my body. Also, it must give some moisture, right? Keeps things moist. And I don't know that the cells do that. Probably not the water. There's water here in my body already. But maybe the cells create that moisture. I don't know. Because again, I'm not a biologist. All I know is the water has a positive effect on my body. And the body knows what to do with it. So how we do these, we're back to, this is the whole point of this class, right? Is to look at what do we use to go through these throughput processes in small group communication? It's how you talk about things, what you talk about, the way you talk about it. That is central to the process of how you go through the throughput process, according to this theory. It moves things. Either it's going to move things or change things, but it's going to be the way that you're going to handle it is through communication. Outputs. So output is just what you think. It's a thing that you produce as a result of the input in the throughput process. Things that are tangible would be reports or presentations. Things that may be not intangible could be what you're getting from your group, right? Maybe you're learning about yourself and you're changing as maybe you've gone through this process of being in the group and you learn more about yourself, and maybe one of the outputs is friendship, right? You've gotten going through this process with this group and some of these people in the group, and you've actually created, you don't know if it's gonna be lifelong, but you've created friends that feel like they might be lifelong friends. So it could be group cohesiveness, certainly synergy, when the group is like clicking along and you're all like got each other, you know what you're doing. This is what we think of the Tuckman's model, right? That's in that probably performing, norming stage. You're just like clicking along and you all get each other and you know what you're doing, right? That could be an output as a result of going through the input and the throughput process. Okay. Environment, that thing that's around you, in this case, the classroom, but it also is, what it impacts your ability to communicate or not communicate in the group. What if you're dependent upon, if this is only an online class and you were dependent upon the internet or having online abilities such as Zoom or other ways, FaceTime or other ways to communicate where you can actually see each other face to face in other virtual environments. Those things, environment can impact whether it's working or not working. The environment can impact you negatively and positively. So when we think about the group and not thinking that it's an open or closed system, think it as an open system, that groups who belong to other things, like a student in class talked about being part of a basketball team that's not part of his school, it's part of the ethnic group that he belongs to. And he talked about doing that basketball team and it goes national, right? And so that group will have an effect on your group because that group that he belongs to impacts how you interact, how he interacts with your group. So the groups that you belong to, think of it, could be religious groups, could be sports teams, could be political groups that you belong to. Those groups inherently affect or inherently impact and kind of guide or maybe shape how you then behave in the group that you're in now. All right, characteristics of systems. Open system. Open system means you allow for information, the free flow of information between you and what's outside of you. Okay, it's not, and the opposite is a closed system. So let's go back to this. An open system would be ideally, let's think of political systems. United States is a pretty open system. Pretty open. We don't really control, we may attempt to control things on what information people get, but not really. We pretty much, there's a lot. I mean, you're not going to go to jail if you find out information unless it's something like highly classified, like what happened with Snowden, right? Where you had to leave the country. But you can get access to a lot of information. This is pretty much an open system that we live in. We have a lot of freedom. So think of it in terms of freedom as well, what an open system is. Now, a closed system, on the other hand, is a system where there's a lot of control. Everything stays in, and sometimes families are like this, right? It's a system where everything has to stay within the family. You're not supposed to talk to outsiders. Don't talk to outsiders about what's going on with you and your family. A lot of times I'm going to say that a closed system, there's a lot of fear there, right? And it's about fear and control. And, a good example of a closed system would be, a political system would be like what's happening in China right now, right? The system is, there's a lot of control over its citizens and what they can and cannot know. So what you want to strike for in your group is an open system, to have the free flow or somewhere in between. Don't be totally closed. Just because a system is open doesn't mean you have to accept everything that wants to impact you. You can be discerning. But that's what we mean by the difference between open and closed systems. Our body is definitely an open system. All right. So interdependence, I talked about this before, that the fact that each element of a system simultaneously influences and is influenced by its environment. So each element, so each part of my body is influenced by other parts of my body. There's no way that they're not living by themselves, right? They're not, my hand doesn't live independently of this other hand. Like, it's the whole thing works together. So that's what interdependence, and they need each other. Feedback enables the system to monitor its progress toward the goal and make corrections when needed. So feedback can come within your system, within your group, or the feedback can actually come from outside of your group. Oftentimes it's thought of like feedback from outside of your group. Okay, it will help to, sometimes people outside of your group can see things that you can't see as a group member. If you're a closed system, feedback will be harder to receive. Multiple causes, multiple paths. So equifinality. This is a concept that means in open systems, an end goal has many potential means to arrive at the same destination. So you could start, here's how you think of equifinality. You could start at completely different points. In fact, I'm going to say this. In class, you all are starting, when you get in your groups, you're all going to be starting at different points because you got different people. But your destination will be the same because the assignment will be the same. The goal is the same, to complete this assignment in a certain way. But how you approach it will be different. And then the other word is multifinality, is that a system starting out with similar conditions arrive at dissimilar endpoints. So I like to think of this in terms of like family members. Have you ever talked to family members, maybe family members like, let's see, I'm thinking about family members in the same family, and they can maybe tell two completely different stories, or you have three family members, they all talk, they all started with the same family, but where they end up, or even how they talk about the family, is totally different. Like if you were to like talk about the story of your first move and you were all, let's say, little kids and your siblings, you would probably all describe it differently. And you could start in the same family and the three of you could end up in completely different. One of you could be highly successful by, American standards, right? Money, car, home, etc. Another one could have trouble with that. Maybe they're a wanderer, or they're like got more of a gypsy soul and they go off and travel and they don't care about material things. And then maybe the third child is like constantly dealing with drug addiction, right? Got a lot of problems that way. So they might have all started with the same family, but they end up in different situations. Okay, I'm going to pause here for a minute. I'll be right back because I'm noticing my clock has gone away and I don't know how long I've been on this video. So hang on a second. So I just noticed that I've been on this video 14 minutes. I'm going to have to make another video. Will be short, the next one. So I apologize for that. I always end up talking longer than I think. But now you have an idea of what's in the general systems theory. We've got inputs, throughputs, outputs in the environment, and feedback. And the words you need to be aware of: interdependence, equifinality, and multifinality. Okay? Awesome. I'll see you in the next video.